I was Vincent's first love, the girlfriend he chased relentlessly. Yet on the night his childhood friend Serena married, he drowned himself in drink for her. He told me he regretted it, lost control, and jumped from the car to his death. His parents sent me to prison. I suffered torments until I died. They still wouldn't stop. My parents died in a car crash. My brother's legs were broken by thugs. My sister-in-law was burned to death, her body split into two. Returning to the night Vincent jumped from the car, I wept for joy. Brother, I'm sorry. I floated in the air, watching my brother crawl on the ground begging, my heart torn beyond measure. At that moment, a grating phone ringtone sounded by my ear. My vision went black. When I opened my eyes again, it was the familiar ceiling. I was reborn? The phone beside the bed kept ringing, the name flashing on the screen, Charles. Vincent's childhood friend. I picked up the phone and remembered that it was this call that ruined my family. My fingers tightened around the device and I slammed it down on the floor. Suddenly I couldn't stop laughing, while tears streamed down my cheeks. Today was the day Vincent's childhood playmate Serena was getting married. Earlier that day he had told me his own wedding would be even more magnificent than hers. Yet he spent the night drinking himself to oblivion. His friend Charles called, asking me to come pick him up. In my previous life, without even changing out of my pajamas, I had driven over in a panic to fetch him. In the car he reeked of alcohol and cried, "Serena, I regret it." I held back the aching in my chest and comforted him. He, however, shattered my heart over and over. "Serena, the one I've always loved is you. Serena, please don't marry him, okay?" In the end, exhausted and spent, I told him, "Then get out of the car and go win her back." He actually opened the door and jumped out. He was struck dead by an oncoming truck. The Vincent family, powerful and influential, put both me and the truck driver in prison. Inside, I was given special attention and was finally tormented to death. Yet his parents still wouldn't relent. Vincent jumped into the river and was rescued. How on earth did he not die? Early in the morning, I was woken by Charles pounding on the door like a maniac. Still in my pajamas, he dragged and hauled me to the hospital, saying Vincent was at death's door and that only I could comfort him. At the ward door, Margaret's voice came from inside. "Now you regret it, now you're at death's door? Serena liked you so much back then, we forced you to get engaged to her. You were the one who said, 'I have someone I like, I only think of Serena as a sister.' I just don't understand, what does Serena lack compared to Elena? Family background, looks, education." Mom, please stop. I insist on saying it. You. I turned to leave, but Charles shoved me hard into the ward from behind. Stumbling, I crashed into the line of sight of everyone in the room. Margaret looked me over from head to toe. Seeing I was still in my pajamas, she immediately sneered in a sing-song tone, "Oh, so you finally decided to show up. My son has been worried sick about you, and you, last night your phone was dead. You nearly made my son jump into the river for you, he almost died. I haven't even come to collect from you yet." I stared at Margaret's well-maintained face, an expression of sharp disdain carved into it. In an instant the scenes of the last life's blood feud flooded back. How she used her power to manufacture my parents' accidental car crash, how she bribed thugs to break my brother's legs, and how a fire left my sister-in-law, who was pregnant with my niece or nephew, dead, one body for two lives. My nails dug deep into my palm, the sting reminded me to stay calm. I looked her squarely in the eyes and sneered, "Aunt, you really think too highly of me." I turned my head and fixed a cold gaze on Vincent, pale on the sickbed, my eyes utterly devoid of love. "Vincent got drunk and jumped into the river for Serena, why drag me into this melodrama? If you really can't let Serena go, fine," I said, my voice icy and resolute, "then let's break up. You're free. Go now and get Serena back." With that I spun on my heel and walked away, without a shred of regret. Behind me came Vincent's urgent calls and Margaret's frantic screams. I knew I didn't yet have the power to take revenge, I couldn't bear the consequences. But it didn't matter, I didn't believe the Vincent family had no weak spots. I deleted every contact of Vincent's the moment I left the hospital. I booked the nearest flight and went back to Jiangqing. When the plane touched down and I set foot on my hometown soil, a sharp bitterness welled up in my chest. In my previous life, after I died, my parents wanted to give me a proper burial, but my body was burned to ashes by Vincent's family. When I pushed open the door to my house, only my sister-in-law was there. She was wearing an apron, a spatula still in her hand. Seeing me, she paused for a moment, then a gentle smile spread across her face. "Elena? Why are you back so suddenly? Come in." Seeing my sister-in-law so alive and tender before me, and remembering the brutal fate she suffered in my last life, a wave of overwhelming fear and a relief at finding her alive both seized me. I couldn't utter a single word. I flung myself into her arms, tears bursting out like a dam breaking. I was afraid rebirth was a dream and that when I opened my eyes I'd still be a drifting soul. I cried until I couldn't stop, and in the end, soothed by my sister-in-law's gentle words, I fell asleep from exhaustion. When I woke again it was already evening, my parents and brother had returned. My mother sat on the edge of the bed, tenderly wiping my face. "Silly child, what wrong did you suffer? You're home now, and your parents can still take care of you." My father didn't ask much, he quietly peeled an apple and handed it to me. "Eat an apple first." My older brother leaned against the doorframe, worry written all over his face. "Did that kid Vincent bully you?" Looking at them, my heart filled with a bittersweet warmth. "They're still alive. How wonderful." I sat up, hugged my mother, then my father, and smiled. "No, I missed you." And I took the apple from my father's hand. It had been a long time since I'd eaten an apple he had peeled. "Vincent and I have broken up." There was a moment of silence in the room. My mother was surprised at first, then let out a sigh of relief and gently pulled me into her arms. "Good. Their family has too high a threshold. If you suffered there, it would be hard for your parents even to speak up for you." The next day, my brother drove me to the airport. Once there, he took my luggage, ruffled my hair, and in a tone more serious than ever said, "Elena, remember, no matter what happens, home will always be your backing. If you're wronged, don't try to bear it all on your own. I may not be as wealthy as the Vincents, but I can take care of you for life." Seeing my brother's gentle, elegant, and spirited face, and remembering his mangled leg from that past life when he had been begging in the mud, my eyes instantly filled with tears. My brother was a favored son of fate. At 20 he founded his own game company with nothing but passion and talent, and his future seemed boundless. But the Vincents paid my brother's close friend heavily to betray him. That man took so-called evidence and twisted truth online, accusing all of my brother's works of stealing his ideas. My brother was driven into a storm of internet abuse, his company went bankrupt, and his reputation was ruined. Even so, he did not collapse utterly. He dragged his exhausted body from place to place looking for work, trying to start over. But the Vincents didn't even give him that sliver of a chance. They bribed thugs and, in the cruelest way, broke his legs, pushing him completely into the abyss. I spun around abruptly, turning my back on my brother, waving my hand hard, afraid he'd see the hatred that had stained my eyes red. "Vincent, your family deserves to die." I saw the person I least wanted to see downstairs at the rented apartment. "Vincent. What rotten luck." I couldn't even lift my eyelids, I simply walked right past him. He grabbed my hand tightly. "Elena, what you said at the hospital was said in anger, right? Why did you block all my contacts?" I looked into his sorrowful eyes and felt only amusement. Still playing the devoted lover role now? I yanked my hand away forcefully and said coldly, "Every word I said that day was true." "I don't believe you." He clung to me again, seizing my hand. "We loved each other so much. For you, I defied my family again and again, gave up my childhood sweetheart Serena, and finally got my parents to agree. You even said meeting me was the greatest luck of your life. How could you be so heartless?" "Vincent, ask yourself," I stared at him, my fingertip pressing hard against his chest, "do you truly love me? If you loved me, Then when Serena married, why did you get drunk and jump into the river? Didn't I make myself clear enough at the hospital? What are you doing here now? I closed in on him, contempt in my eyes. When Serena liked him, he sneered. When Serena married, he regretted it. Tell me, isn't he ridiculous? What, am I a garbage dump? He panicked at once, babbling an incoherent explanation. No. Elena, listen to me. I just couldn't accept her suddenly getting married. After all we've been childhood sweethearts for over 10 years, inseparable. Do you even believe that yourself? I cut him off from that nauseating spiel, swiped my card and went inside without looking back. Elena. The last time we parted, the next time I saw Vincent was at a college reunion. I was the last to arrive. The private room was deafeningly noisy, the only empty seat stood out to the left of Vincent. It seemed nobody there knew we had broken up. They greeted me warmly and urged me to come sit. I smiled, didn't look in that direction, and simply called the waiter over. Could you bring one more chair, please? Then, of course, I sat down beside Serena. The atmosphere froze instantly. Everyone's eyes darted between me and Vincent, whose face had suddenly darkened, and at last they slowly began to understand. Serena leaned toward me and whispered, "You broke up?" I gave a slight nod. Her face registered disbelief, and for a moment a flash of pleasure passed through her eyes. I used to be Vincent's first love, the one he pursued at all costs and by any means necessary. Our beginning felt like a romantic idol drama. We first met at my flower shop. My brother had opened it for me while I was in college. That day, he came to buy a birthday bouquet for Serena. After that, he became a regular. I sensed he might like me, but I was also clear-headed enough to know that the interests of a rich boy are often just a passing novelty. Yet he staged a grand declaration of love that shook the whole campus. I refused. What followed was months of relentless pursuit: flowers, watches, designer bags, necklaces. I returned every gift to him exactly as they were. What truly stirred my heart was seeing him, by chance, gently and patiently feeding stray cats, his eyes without a trace of pretense. It was him stepping forward to help a girl being harassed when he saw injustice. It was him naturally bending down to pick up scattered bottles for an elderly scavenger. On his 99th confession, I said yes. After we got together, he did respect me, placed me on equal footing, without the spoiled arrogance of the typical rich heir. I once thought I was lucky. If Serena hadn't suddenly married, if he hadn't drunkenly thrown himself from the car, if the blood debt of last life's ruined family hadn't existed, but sadly, there are no ifs. His reckless attempt to end his life brought about the ruin of my family. So in this life, there is only one kind of relationship between us, enemies who will not rest until one of us dies. Coming out of the restroom, Vincent was indeed blocking the corridor. A cigarette was pinched between his fingers. When he saw me, he immediately stubbed it out. I lowered my eyes, so he had remembered all along. He used to quit smoking for me because I couldn't stand even the slightest smell of smoke. Even when he gathered with his friends, he would warn them over and over in advance that nobody was allowed to smoke in front of me. Those past acts of kindness, thinking back now, only feel absurd. "Elena," he said, looking exhausted, his voice hoarse. I went back and thought for a long time. "The one I love is you. Serena liked me for so long, and when she suddenly married, He seemed unable to finish, hanging his head. It was my pride as a man, that's why I drank myself under the table. After drinking, I don't even know why I was so reckless to jump into the river." He looked up and stared at me. "That wasn't my intention, Elena." I listened calmly until he finished, raised my hand, and showed the ring on the ring finger of my right hand. "Vincent, I'm married. Don't come bothering me anymore." His pupils contracted sharply. He grabbed my hand and frantically tried to pull the ring off. "You lied to me, didn't you? How could you possibly marry someone else?" "I don't believe it." The bodyguard standing not far away stepped forward immediately and neatly pried him away. I smoothed my sleeve and caught sight of Serena peeking from around the corner. I said to her, "I've already paid for the dinner. Please keep an eye on everyone for me, I have to go." Ignoring Vincent's nearly hysterical shouting behind me, "Elena! Come back! Tell me this isn't true." I left without looking back. Sitting in the speeding car, I lowered my head and stared absent-mindedly at the ring on my ring finger. A week ago, after laying everything bare with Vincent downstairs from my rented room, a terrible, gnawing anxiety had been eating at me day and night. I knew full well that unless I toppled the Vincent family quickly, the hatred in my heart would not be appeased. The horrific scene of my parents' brutal deaths in my previous life, my sister-in-law swallowed by flames, my brother crawling on the street begging. They replayed in my dreams every night, never letting me have a moment's peace. So I frantically searched through the memories of my past life, looking for forces that could stand against the Vincent family. One name leapt out at me, the Zhu family. A true century-old aristocratic clan, their foundations deep and unfathomable. I remembered that the patriarch's most beloved youngest son, Julian, had been in a severe car accident not long ago and was now in a vegetative state. That old man was extremely superstitious. After searching in vain for famous doctors, he sought out the abbot of Linging Temple. At the time the story even trended online. The abbot issued a decree, saying that Julian's benefactor was born in Yunluo village. Renwu Isi Gue Hai Jiayin. The Zhu family did indeed use that clue to find my rural hometown and then tracked down my parents. They didn't explicitly say, to clash for luck, but their intention couldn't have been clearer: find a girl whose destiny matches the boy's to keep company with a man who might never wake again. My parents were honest and straightforward, but not fools. The moment they heard it they understood the Zhu family's implication. There was no way they would agree. To them it was nothing less than pushing me into a bottomless pit of fire, forcing me to become a lifelong living widow for a wealthy family. They loved their daughter dearly, and they knew full well they could not stand against a behemoth like the Zhu family. They feared that the slightest hesitation would turn me into a bride to break the curse. So they chose the most decisive course. They threw the messenger straight out the door, completely cutting off the Zhu family's hopes. This matter I only learned after my death, when my spirit had nowhere to belong and drifted by chance to the Zhu family. It was at Julian's funeral, from the servants' mouths, that I heard about it. In this life, the Zhu family is my only and best chance to destroy the Vincent family. I must seize it. I packed my luggage as fast as I could and returned to Jiangqing. Judging by the timing, people from the Zhu family would come calling in just a few days. I pushed open the front door, every pair of eyes in the house instantly focused on me. The atmosphere was so heavy it felt suffocating. I forced down my heartbeat and feigned puzzlement. "Dad, Mom, do we have guests?" On the sofa sat a dignified, elegant woman in a qipao. Behind her stood several stern-looking bodyguards and a cultured old butler. My mother's face went pale. She sprang up and tried to pull me back inside. "Elena, you go to your room first." "Wait." The beautiful woman's voice was gentle but left no room for doubt. "I think the person involved has the right to know about this." My father wore a stern expression and said decisively, "She's still young. Her marriage, we can fully decide that." The beautiful woman smiled softly and looked at me with warmth. "Mr. Robert Sue, young girls these days have far more of their own minds than we did back then. Especially when it concerns a marriage that affects their whole life." At that, I immediately pulled my hand away from my mother's, hurried over, and sat down beside my father. "Since it's my marriage being discussed, I must know." The lady's smile in her eyes was more sincere. "All right, then Auntie will be frank. You can call me Aunt Victoria. My younger brother Julian was in a car accident some time ago and has been unconscious ever since. My father dotes on him and wants to find a wife who will care for him attentively. After all, even the most professional nurse or caregiver can't match a wife's meticulousness." I pretended not to understand and asked directly, "Why choose me?" "I won't hide it from you either," Aunt Victoria said with candid tone. My father believes strongly in this. The abbot of Linging Temple performed a divination and said Julian's benefactor, his fate, birth date, and place of birth, all match yours. We searched everywhere before finally finding you here. I pondered for a moment, then asked the crucial question, if he wakes up and doesn't like me, can I get a divorce? Of course. Aunt Victoria answered curtly. We, the Dejoux family, are reasonable people, we would never force anyone. We'll give you ample compensation when the time comes and send you off with honor. Okay. I nodded. I'm willing to marry him. Elena. What are you saying? My parents panicked instantly, my mother tried to cover my mouth. Children babble, it's not binding. Aunt Victoria ignored my parents and looked at me with a grave expression, confirming again, Elena, think this through. If my brother never wakes, you might have to care for him your whole life. If he dies tragically, by old custom you, as his widow, would not be allowed to remarry. This is not a game. I gently pushed my mother's hand aside, turned to my parents, and gave them an unwavering look. Dad, Mom, I know what I'm doing. I'm not a child anymore. They will never know that the daughter sitting before them now had a soul clawed back from hell. In my previous life, my parents spent everything to hire the best lawyers they could find. But before power and influence, every defense was pale and powerless. I was still nailed with the charge of negligent homicide, plus other crimes, and sentenced to life. I will never forget the day of the verdict, my parents' hair gone white overnight and their spines stooped. They wouldn't give up, they ran everywhere to appeal for me, only wanting to win me justice. But the Vincent family never intended to spare my parents. In the end, they died in that accidental car crash. I know it wasn't an accident, it was the Vincent family's revenge on me. In this life, my parents are still alive and well. I will never allow the tragedy of my past life to repeat. Even if it means plunging into the abyss and paying with my life, I will drag the entire Vincent family down with me. Otherwise, the disaster that befell my family will come back around again. Because I know. Vincent, he will surely come back to entangle me. My parents went weak at the sight of the resolve in my eyes. Only then did Aunt Victoria ask, what are your terms? I stepped forward, leaned close to her ear, and in a voice that only the two of us could hear, enunciated each word, my condition is that the Vincent family must vanish completely from Suching. Aunt Victoria's pupils constricted, she glanced at me with a look full of meaning. A vendetta? Yes. My voice was icy. She barely hesitated, stood up, good. Any other requests? No more. She nodded slightly, and with her people left crisply, leaving our family and the room full of silence. Young madam, we've arrived. The bodyguard opened the car door for me, his deep voice pulled me back from my memories. I composed myself, got out of the car, and walked straight toward the quiet detached villa on the east side of the estate. The first time I saw Julian, even though he lay in an unending sleep, I was still struck by that astonishing face. Like a jade among strangers, a young master unrivaled in the world. My marriage to him wasn't announced to the world, but the marriage certificate was real enough. The Dejoux family's betrothal gifts arrived on a list so thick when unfolded it was over a foot, its value was staggering. My parents held that gold-stamped list with trembling hands, almost afraid to accept it. It's been a week since I married into the Dejoux family, and all of it still often leaves me dazed and disbelieving. The Vincent family, which once crushed us and left us helpless, now seemed as insignificant before the Dejoux family's great ship as an ant that could be crushed underfoot. The Dejoux family's eldest brother, Alexander, a man with a commanding presence and decisive ways, once asked me directly, the Vincent family, how do you want them to die? A quick cut, or be worn down with a blunt knife? I froze for a moment, then reacted swiftly as chill and hatred seeped into my bones. The blunt knife, I said. I will make them lose, little by little, the things they cherish most, rot slowly in fear and despair, and taste 1% of the pain I felt in my past life. When Alexander heard this, he only gave a slight nod and said nothing more, as if it were a trivial matter. He merely instructed me, take good care of Julian. Don't worry about the Vincent family's affairs anymore, I will give you a satisfactory resolution. I gave Julian his daily full-body massage. I hadn't finished when I was already sweating from the effort. After washing up, I sat as usual in the recliner by his bed and read him a book. His bedroom opened into a vast study. I went in every day, yet I was still struck by the trophies and certificates that covered the walls, silent testaments to his astonishing past. Julian, who graduated from university at 16 and entered the National Research Institute in his sophomore year thanks to extraordinary talent, is truly heaven's favored son. Tired of reading, I put the book down and watched his serene, perfect profile. Compelled by some mischievous impulse, I leaned forward and pressed a kiss to his slightly cool lips. After doing it, I froze for a moment, then let out a small, amused laugh. Someone as outstanding as the moonlit Haoyue has now become my husband. If not stealing a kiss now, then when? I was afraid that if he woke up tomorrow, I might never have another chance. I made inquiries beforehand. There was no close female companion by his side. I also observed carefully, there were no traces of any woman in his study. Otherwise, I would never have committed this act of stealing fragrance. My gaze unintentionally swept over the delicate collarbone beneath his nightshirt, and my cheeks suddenly warmed. I couldn't help but recall the embarrassment of the first time I washed him. And that unexpected sight, the majestic opposite of his handsome face. Even later, on another occasion, when his body reacted involuntarily, it was still with a flushed face and trembling hands that I helped him relieve it. I keep this matter as an absolute secret and have never mentioned it to anyone. I have tended to him with all my heart and effort, but I do not know whether he will ever wake in this life. Still, I sincerely hope he will awaken. Someone so exceptional shouldn't fade away so dimly. He ought to keep shining, to complete the unfinished, magnificent life that was his. Every morning I replace the flowers in Julian's bedroom with a fresh bouquet, then sit on the edge of the bed and chatter to him about trivial things. That day, Alexander came to visit Julian. He stood by the bed and told me in a flat tone, "The Zhu family has already leaked word that Vincent's family offended us." He paused, as if mentioning something insignificant. Now, Vincent's family's business partners are one after another terminating cooperation, the banks are calling in loans, their stock has plunged and is close to hitting the limit down. Vincent's father is frantic, they say half his hair has gone white. After updating him on the Vincent situation, he glanced at Julian, who was still asleep, then prepared to leave. "Big brother!" I called out instinctively. Alexander stopped, turned, and shot me a questioning look. My heart raced, my palms were slightly sweaty. After hesitating, I asked, "Big brother, are you planning to bid against the Wangs for that plot in the west of the city?" Alexander's gaze sharpened in an instant. He didn't answer, he just looked at me silently, waiting for me to continue. I took a deep breath, my tone becoming unbearably solemn. "Please, you must under no circumstances bid on that plot. No matter how much potential it seems to have, no matter how tempting the inside information is, don't touch it." In my previous life, both the Zhu and Wang families received insider tips that the state would build a high-speed rail station in the west of the city. The two families fought bitterly over it, and the Zhu family ultimately won the bid at a tremendous cost. In the end, however, the state's final plan placed the station in the south of the city. As a result, the Zhu family's funding chain collapsed and their losses were catastrophic, while the Wang family seized the opportunity to rise and surpassed the Zhu family in one stroke. I could not allow the Zhu family to repeat that mistake and be reduced to the city's second-rate family. My plan for revenge could not suffer any mishaps. Alexander's deep gaze lingered on my face for a long time, as if trying to discern the truth and intent behind my words. In the end, he said nothing, he only nodded slightly and turned to leave. My heart fluttered, I didn't know whether he believed me or merely took it for idle talk. If he didn't believe, I would have to come up with another plan as soon as possible. While I was wringing my hands trying to figure out how to persuade Alexander, the butler respectfully came to inform me, "Young madam, the plot in the west of the city was won by the Wang family." He added, "Master asked me to tell you, I hope your judgment will not disappoint the Zhu family." As soon as the butler left, I almost jumped for joy. An immense happiness and a sense of relief washed over me. I hurried over to Julian's bedside and kissed him hard. "Did you hear that? That's wonderful, that piece of land, we avoided it." I didn't notice at all that Julian's finger twitched. That day, my college group chat suddenly exploded with messages, countless tags pointing at me. I opened it and saw the same core message over and over. "Vincent and Serena are together." I let out a small laugh. Of course. I remembered the last class reunion, when Serena heard Vincent and I had broken up. The gladness she tried so hard to hide still leaked through her eyes. I flipped back through the records and pieced together the whole story. It turned out that the night Serena learned we had broken up, she went home and insisted on divorcing the husband she was in an arranged marriage with. But how could the Lynn family possibly allow her to wreck such an important business alliance? In the end, Serena took a drastic detour. She drugged Vincent, and the two were unfortunately found together, caught in flagrante delicto. Serena used that to secure the divorce, but Vincent was disgusted. He called her low and shameless, declaring that she deserved her fate and that he would never marry her. Then an even more dramatic twist arrived. Serena became pregnant. At that moment, the Vincent family, desperate and in urgent need of financial infusion, could hardly ignore the Lynn family as a lifeline. So Vincent was forced to marry Serena. I received Vincent and Serena's gilded wedding invitation. I decided to give them a wedding present they would never forget. On the wedding day I deliberately wore a bright red cheapao, its color fierce, celebrating the opening of my revenge. Sure enough, the moment I appeared Vincent's gaze kept falling on me. He even stumbled over his words while the priest was reading the declaration, making the scene briefly awkward. Beside him Serena wore a pristine wedding dress, her eyes full of poison, as if she wanted to tear me limb from limb. I smiled at her. Back when Vincent was chasing me, hadn't she sabotaged me both openly and in secret? Vincent's friends still held prejudices against me to this day, and much of that was thanks to her running around slanders. More viciously, in university she spread the rumor that I was being kept by a rich businessman. If I hadn't been headstrong and threatened suicide to force the school to investigate and clear my name, I would probably have been drowned by spittle and scorn and dropped out in depression. The wedding ceremony proceeded in the usual order, and it was time to play the video of the couples meeting and falling in love. The huge screen lit up, but what appeared was not a sweet montage, but secret footage of Vincent's father coming and going from private residences with different young women, even frolicking with them as if they were one happy family. Immediately after, the scene cut to an intimate clip of Margaret, Vincent's mother, keeping a young male college student at an upscale club. The audience fell into an instant, stunned silence, then erupted into suppressed gasps and whispering. Vincent's face went pale, he clenched his fists so hard his knuckles went white. Vincent's father Lawrence's face changed the moment he appeared on screen. He yelled at the crew in a panic, "Turn it off. Turn it off now." I sat upright in the guests section, gently swaying the champagne flute in my hand, watching that family's disgrace on stage, and said coldly in my heart, "Vincent, do you still like this wedding gift? Don't be in a hurry, this is just a bit of the interest being collected." When I returned to the Zhu family estate, I found everyone gathered outside Julian's door, the atmosphere heavy and strangely tense. My heart dropped, and I hurriedly pushed through the crowd and rushed inside. But the result was that Julian was sitting propped against the headboard. Though his face was pale, his eyes, clear and bright, were looking around with a hint of the bewilderment of someone newly awake. The Zhu family gathered at the bedside, each of them crying with joy. The Zhu family patriarch gripped his hand tightly, tears streaming down his face, murmuring over and over, "It's good that you're awake, it's good that you're awake." Seeing this tender scene, I instinctively slowed my pace, intending to slip out quietly and leave the space to the family. Just as I was about to step through the door, a hoarse yet distinct voice sounded, "Wife, where are you going?" I froze in place. Every pair of eyes in the room suddenly focused on me, studying me with a mix of surprise and implication. I turned away awkwardly, unsure what to do with my hands and feet. The Zhu family grandpa, seeing this, immediately wiped his eyes and, suppressing a smile, spoke, all right, everyone out, everyone out. Let Julian and Elena, the young couple, have a proper conversation. The crowd filed out with kindly laughter and whispering, and thoughtfully closed the door behind them. The room suddenly held only the two of us. I kept my head down, staring at the pattern on the carpet, almost willing a hole into it with my gaze. Julian looked at me with my ostrich-like behavior and suddenly gave a soft laugh, his voice hoarse from not speaking for a long time. Why are you scared now that I'm awake? When I was in a coma, you stole kisses from me, nagged me, even, weren't you being pretty bold? I was so shocked that I snapped my head up. You've been conscious all along? He gave me a small roll of his eyes, but his tone was teasing. I just can't move, I'm not dead. Then I'll help you. My cheeks flushed instantly, my toes curling awkwardly in my shoes, and I couldn't finish the sentence. Help me with what? He deliberately pressed, a mischievous light flashing in his eyes. Just that. I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl into a hole in the ground. Which one? He seemed determined to tease me, insisting I say it aloud. Cornered, I shut my eyes and let loose as if taking a leap, using your hand to help relieve it. Can't you feel it too? After shouting, my whole face burned bright red, I didn't dare open my eyes to look at him. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then I heard his infuriatingly amused voice, Elena, do you want to take a look behind you first? Huh? I blinked open my eyes in confusion and turned my head. I saw that the bedroom door had been pushed open just enough to create a sizable crack. My eldest brother and several other family members stood at the threshold, mouths agape, clearly having heard my earth-shattering yell just now. Is there a mouse hole I can crawl into? Julian's waking allowed me, without any scruple, to carry out my final revenge on the Vincent family. Step 1, strike at the heart. I stormed into the Vincent house with bodyguards. Without ceremony, the guards forced Vincent's father, Lawrence, flat to the floor and made them kneel before me. Elena. What are you trying to do? You're breaking into a private residence. You wait, Margaret's shrill curses cut off abruptly. With a single look from me, the bodyguard behind me spun and slapped her hard across the face, making her head tilt and silencing her in an instant. I leaned in slightly, but my gaze fell on Vincent's father, whose face had gone ashen, and I said teasingly, Mr. Lawrence, if you want someone to blame, blame yourself for marrying such a good wife. As for me, I don't have many virtues, just a long memory. Madam once humiliated me with money, I have never forgotten it for a moment. Now that I've turned my fortunes around, isn't it only right I get my revenge? As soon as the words left my mouth, the bodyguard threw down a thick stack of documents in front of Vincent's father. They detailed Margaret's secret transfer of the family's last assets, her plan to run off with her lover. Almost at the same time, another document was tossed in front of Vincent's parents. It detailed every illegitimate child Vincent's father had outside the marriage, along with proof that each of those children held substantial shares of the Luo family company. Vincent's father glanced at it, and bloodshot veins instantly webbed his eyes. A vein bulged on his forehead as he suddenly slapped Margaret hard across the face. You traitorous bitch, stealing from your own and using the money to raise other men's children. Margaret was stunned by the blow for a moment, but when she saw the files about the illegitimate children she immediately snapped. Screaming, she lunged forward and clawed fiercely at Vincent's father's face with her nails. How dare you hit me? Aren't you the one keeping so many bastards on the side? Where does Vincent fit into all this? Who are you to judge me? Despair and rage consumed them completely. Like two mad dogs, they cursed, tore at, and bit each other on the cold floor with no dignity, shredding the last shred of each other's respect to pieces. I quietly enjoyed the farce. The taste of power is truly intoxicating. The second step, reckoning. I stood in the shadow of the street corner, watching coldly as a few thugs wielding iron bars brought them down, once, again, smashing hard into Vincent's legs. The dull crack of bone breaking and his piercing screams sounded unusually sweet in the night air. This scene felt so familiar. In my previous life I hovered in the air, watching my brother's legs get broken like that, and all I could do was cry out in despair. Now the roles have been reversed. I am the one holding the chess pieces. Vincent was treated like trash, dragged and thrown back onto the steps of the Vincent family villa. Along with him were explicit, unsavory photographs of Serena tangled with various men in different settings. I want him to know, lucidly and in pain, from beginning to end he was a joke. In my past life, if it hadn't been for him willfully jumping from the car in the name of some so-called deep love, how would my family have suffered such a catastrophe, ending with our home destroyed and our people dead? He is the source of all the tragedy. How could I possibly let him go? Breaking his legs is only the first installment of interest reclaimed. The complete annihilation of his mind, that is the truest punishment for him. Step 3, Annihilation. One night there was a gas leak and an explosion at Serena's apartment. Flames rose to the sky, devouring her and the child in her womb. Just like my sister-in-law in my previous life, she was burned alive amid endless pain and despair. I went specifically to offer my condolences. I saw Vincent in a wheelchair, his eyes hollow and despairing, and beside him Lawrence, who looked as if he had aged 20 years overnight. The bone-deep grief on their faces made the corners of my mouth involuntarily lift into a faint smile. Elena. What are you doing here? Get out. Are you here to laugh at the Vincent family? The moment Margaret saw me, she lost control, screaming as if to pounce and drive me away. I immediately put on just the right expression of grief, voice hurt, and, how could you think that? Serena's death was an accident. As an old classmate, I'm sad too. Can't I come to see her off? If I'm not welcome here, then I'll leave. With that, I turned and left without hesitation. After all, the spectacle I wanted to see had already unfolded. Lawrence may have sensed that something was wrong and tried to flee the country. However, the vehicle they were traveling in suffered brake failure, barreled through the guardrail at high speed, rolled, and plunged down the steep cliff. The gas tank detonated in an instant, burying them completely in a pillar of flame. The scene was so hauntingly similar to the accidental car crash my parents had meticulously staged in their past lives. I stood on the highest terrace of the Zhu family estate, looking down over the myriad lights of Sioux City. A bodyguard had just reported that Vincent could not bear the thought of begging in his future. In a filthy alley of the slums, he used a shard of glass to end his brilliant yet absurd life. The evening breeze stirred my long hair. There was no rapture, only a clear, cold calm. Julian came to my side and silently draped a shawl over my shoulders. Is it all over? His voice blended with the wind. I murmured softly, my gaze fixed on the distance where once loomed the colossal Vincent family, now utterly erased. I used everything I could use, paid everything I could pay. At last, this blood-stained cycle that began with his death and continued with the ruin of my family was brought to a close by my own hand. Every second of my rebirth was for this moment of dust settling. Vincent family, this is the price you must pay. After I mailed the signed divorce papers to Julian, I left no trace, no last words. I vanished completely from his world. He was that kind of man, pure and open, noble and composed, a bright moon hung high in the heavens, deserving of the most unblemished and complete love and life. And I was a demon clawing my way back from hell, hands stained with blood, my whole being steeped in sin. This revenge had long since hollowed out my soul, leaving not a trace of tenderness. Our marriage began with exploitation, it ought to end in estrangement. This was the last thing I could do for him. Not to disturb him was the only gift I could offer, my final act of tenderness.